Welcome everyone to our Quadratics unit. We're going to be here for a couple weeks. This is a pretty long one. It's one of the bigger units, one of the bigger things you need to take away from this class. First thing we're going to focus on is graphing quadratics. So this is the start of our unit. Remember, like we talked in class the other day, we're going to start using the flipped classroom model. What this is you're going to go home, watch the video, you'll come into class where we'll actually apply it, we'll do little projects and such. You won't have homework for these days besides watching the video and taking notes. Taking notes is really important, guys. Please do not just watch the video and not take notes. So by now you should have out your notebook that we use for class and your pencil. Okay, so by the end of this unit you'll be able to factor, graph, solve using different methods. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be able to get through this and you guys are going to love it by the end. Okay, so let's start with a little icebreaker, a little anticipatory set, a little something to get you ready for what we're going to be doing today. Just like we do in class, but this time we're doing it online. I know a lot of you are big basketball fans, so I decided that we're going to try and get a little bit of the sports aspect going on in this. So we're going to take a couple seconds, watch a little bit of this video. Okay, so right now I want you to pause the video, go down the comments, and tell me if you think he's going to make this shot or not. Explain why. As much reasoning and detail as you can possibly think of, I want that to go into your comment. Okay, so again, comment, did he make it? Post it in the comments with your reasoning. So our agenda today is really simple. It's going to be pretty similar for most of our flipped models. We're going to go through any formulas you need. We'll go through an example or two. We'll get to our conclusion. Grade 9 standard from Common Core's EDT598. You can read that for yourself. We're going to be dealing with the quadratics part of it. Your objective is to be able to graph quadratics and determine intercepts. Tell me if the graph has a minimum or a maximum. Some of this stuff isn't going to be more obvious than others. We'll go through it all. The important formulas that you need to know. Okay, the most important one of this entire unit is that first one right there, the standard form of a quadratic. In order to do pretty much anything with these, we need it to be in that form. And it's y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Whenever I say standard form, this is what I'm talking about. A, b, and c are some numbers. They could be fractions, they could be decimals, they could be integers, they can be anything. X squared and x, those are our x variables, y is our y variable. Those aren't going to change in the standard form. We're going to replace those like we did with the linear unit, but overall those are always going to be x and y in standard form. We also have something called the vertex. Okay, that's an important word, you need to remember that word. The vertex is either the highest point or the lowest point on the graph. If our a value is positive, that means our graph opens up, which I'll show you what that means in a little bit, and it means our vertex is a minimum. If a is negative, it means the graph opens down, it means our vertex is a maximum. Okay. This equation here, this x equals opposite of b over 2a, also gives us something known as the axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry is a vertical line that when we graph it, it cuts our parabola into two perfect halves. They'll match up with each other. Okay. We normally don't draw the axis of symmetry unless we need it for something, but we talk about it. So these are the two formulas you need. Make sure you have them written down, as well as definitions of vertex and axis of symmetry. Okay. So this is just a general method of graphing. Okay, it's not going to tell you everything, but it's going to let you know about what we're going to do. So we find the x value of the vertex. We use that opposite of b over 2a. Okay, remember it's opposite, which means if b is positive, we turn it negative. If it's negative, we turn it positive, just like when we worked with linear equations. You plug that into the equation at the y value. Again, still it's evaluating. We've done this the entire year, guys. We make a table value with points above and below that value. Okay, that value being the x value of the vertex. Reason we want that is because we have two different sides of a parabola. Okay, it's not exactly the same the entire way like linear equations were. So we had to make sure we get a good number of points. General rule of thumb is 3 points above, 3 points below, and you're looking pretty good. And then just like we do a linear, we can graph from that table. Probably a good idea to get this written down. Make sure it's in your notes, guys. We're going to go through an example. It's a pretty simple example. We're going to have some sites at the end for you to go get another example. Okay, besides this video, I want you guys to look at least one of the other sources before tomorrow. Okay, so we're going to graph y equals ax squared plus 6x minus 1. Okay, so we know we're graphing because it says the word graph. First thing we want is labeling our values. When I say labeling your values, I'm talking about the a, the b, and the c. Okay, from that standard form. A is in front of the x squared, b is in front of the x, c is the constant. That's why we want this standard form, so we can label these without having to think too much. It becomes second nature by the end of this unit. Since we don't see anything in front of the x squared, remember that value, just like with linear, that value is 1. B is in front of the x, that's a positive 6. C is the constant, that's a negative 1. Okay, so we want to label those. Get used to this. Pretty much every single thing we do in this unit, we're going to have to label those. After we get those labeled, we need the axis of symmetry, that x value of that vertex. Okay, so remember that's our x equals opposite of b over 2a. Every time you graph, you're going to use this. We plug in our a and our b values. Since it's the opposite of b and b is positive, it's negative 6. So negative 6 over 2 times 1. Then we just reduce. Negative 6 divided by 2, which gives us negative 3. Okay, so we have our axis of symmetry. Remember that's also the x value of our vertex. So that's going to be the middle of our table. So we're going to set up our table around x equals negative 3. Remember we want 3 points above, 3 points below. So the 3 points above are negative 2, negative 1, 0. 3 points below are negative 4, negative 5, negative 6. Try to keep these all relatively small. You can use any numbers on either side, but if you try to make them too big or too small, you're not going to have enough room on your graph. We get the y values by evaluating each x value by plugging into that equation that we started with. Okay. Go ahead, take a minute, pause the video, go ahead, try that out. We did that a lot with our linear, so I think you guys can do it for yourselves. Okay, by now you should have plugged all these in. You should have gotten your y values out, so go ahead and check it with my table. If you got different values, make sure that when you were squaring these negative values, you made them positive. Notice how the y values for like negative 4 and negative 2 for the x's, both the y's are negative 9. You have negative 6 for the x values of negative 5 and negative 1, and you have negative 1 for 0 and negative 6. You should see this pattern if all the x values are equidistant from our vertex. Okay, that's the point of a parabola. The axis of symmetry cuts it in half really nice. Once we get this table, we can graph it. Okay, we're going to use our table of values. We're going to plot those 6 points. We're connected with a nice smooth U shape. Okay, this is a parabola. It always makes this shape. Our vertex is this point right down here. That's our minimum. Notice how it's the bottom, so it's a minimum. Where it crosses the x-axis are our x-intercepts. Where it crosses the y-axis is our y-intercept. Notice with this that y-intercept is pretty clear of 0, negative 1, but those x-intercepts, kind of hard to tell exactly what those are. It looks like about 0.2, it may be negative 6.1. Really hard to see. This is going to be really big in the future. So just keep that in mind. We want to get these as exact as we can, but unfortunately that's not always possible. Okay, so that's our example. That's the one we're going to go through. It's pretty simple, pretty basic. So to get some more help, here are some more sites. We've used these in the past. I want you to look at least one of these guys. It doesn't really matter which one. Pick which one you like the best. Math is Fun and Purple Math both list everything out for you using text, so it's a little bit of reading. Khan Academy gives you a video. Okay, so whatever way you like to watch more, if you like the video for the visual, if you like the text so you can go back and read it and it's easier to write down for you, pick whatever one works better for you. And just looking at these really quick, we're not going to go much into this, but those three websites that I gave you. This is Math is Fun, colorful, gives you the examples, starts really basic, gives you a nice quadratic equation explorer they can play around with, goes into some more examples. Okay, so you can look at this, you can try some out, great site. Purple Math, another great site. Again, lists everything out. This one's a bit more wordy, so it gives a bit more definitions. So people who like to read more, this is great. They give you some incorrect graphs. With this one, it is more than one page. So if you use this, make sure you look at each and every page. Don't just stop at the first. And then Khan Academy, we've used this a bit in the past. Gives you the video. Ignore this left menu over here. We don't need that. Just focus on this video. It's Khan like always. He does a great job of explaining everything. There are also comments down here if you want to look and see what other people have said. These are by no means the only things on the internet that you can look at. You can go to YouTube and look up graphing quadratics. You can go to Google and look up graphing quadratics. Find something that works well for you. Make sure you take notes. It's a good idea to get in the habit of looking at least one of these, like I'm asking you to do, but 2 and 3 is going to help you out tremendously. This is pretty much what we're going to do when we do the flip model. Okay, so our little conclusion will be really quick. What you guys need to remember the most is that general method of how to set up our table. Once we get that, you guys are pretty good at actually evaluating it. You need to remember standard form. You have to memorize it. The better you know that, the easier stuff is going to get in the long run. Remember that formula for how to find the vertex as well. That x equals opposite b over 2a. It's going to help you out tremendously. The more you get used to this stuff, the better you're going to get. Tomorrow when you guys come to class, we'll actually apply this. We'll do a little project. You guys will answer a couple questions so we can see how you did. Remember, we're going to do this a couple times a week. I will remind you in class on the days that we're going to do this. Okay, so tomorrow, please bring your notes and your questions to class with you. By now, you should have your answer for this in the comments below. If you don't, make sure you pause this before I press play and put your comment in the comments below. He makes it. We'll go through in class some computer tools that you can use to actually graph this and how we can make predictions from it. I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a good night.